change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast. I'm Nathan Chappell. I'm here with Scott Rosenkrantz. I think have you had coffee this morning?
Yeah, but I need more.
I feel like you do.
Yeah. It's been a long 6 months, I think.
Oh, it's been a long 42 years or whatever. How old are you?
41.
Oh, 41. Okay. Sorry not to make you older.
41 and a half. So,
almost 42 years. Yeah. No, excited to be here today. Scott and I are in person, which we always love to be able to record a podcast together. I think it's just so much easier and nicer, a little bit, I don't know, just more friendly when we're not just in Zoom, but we're together today in Indianapolis, concluding the first AHP, Association for Healthcare Philanthropy AI conference, which started a few days ago. Just finished my last cohort session, so I am free and clear. And you presented yesterday,
some opening remarks, so also free and clear, which is now nice because now we get to sit back and
so it's been great. I think this conference actually shed a lot of light on where the industry is at. I mean, I don't think healthcare is ahead or behind other areas within the nonprofit sector. I think they're probably a pretty good representation. If anything, they probably think that they're further behind, but I think most sectors feel like they're further behind. I will say that one common theme that I heard a lot over the last couple of days is the levels of bureaucracy within healthcare are really prohibiting, in their opinion, exploration and innovation, and just kind of at this like kind of stalled thing of like, we want to use AI, but the enterprise is not allowing us because of privacy concerns or security concerns. That might be a little unique around healthcare just because of
the data,
HIPAA data, electronic medical record data, and the sensitivity of that. And the fact that nobody wants to go to HIPAA jail. So
I don't.
Yeah, no, I kind of pass on the HIPAA jail. I mean, the fines are in the millions of dollars. And so, I mean, I totally get it from that perspective. But I don't think they're that different than a lot of other sectors, and just like this kind of slowness of the AI adoption. I will say, though, when I kind of reflect on the last couple of days, our sector is actually pretty far behind.
Yes, but I mean, you read Conor Grennan stuff, like, doesn't seem like everyone's far behind. I think the challenge is that it seems, I guess I could argue both ways. The challenge is that it seems so easy to it, like it's right there in front of you, you get output immediately, and you can do all these magical things, right? But nobody's really like using it to its fullest potential. But I don't know if anyone is really using it to its fullest.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I guess that is a clear distinction. So when we're talking about like use versus strategy, and so like use is high. Like when we've gone into organizations and we've talked to them about like, what are people doing? Of course, like a lot of them have like gotten Copilot to like embed within the organization, but no one's using it. But it turns out 75% are using some sort of AI. I think what I feel like we're further behind is like any kind of identification of AI strategy. If I compare that to like Virtuous is literally like now declared themselves as an AI first organization, which means like go and do things and break things and fail fast and try new things and like accelerate our ability to like deliver products faster, better. That is, I just don't see a lot of AI strategy in the nonprofit sector. And so, I mean, that is probably the next frontier in the area that we need to go from like these passive or shadow uses of AI to active fundraising, or not active AI strategies, like a roadmap that says, look, like in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, we are going to empower everyone on our team with the right tools to do the right things to amplify mission. Just things are like kind of in this stalled kind of moment right now.
Yeah, and do so with direction. Right? Not just like, I think that's where we saw a lot of frustration, is that a lot of organizations will buy licenses for everyone.
Right.
But then that's it. And they think that just having the license, like, all right, well, now you know what to do. Now we're all going to be more efficient. Now we're going to save time. We have no idea where we're going.
Or even buy the license and not tell anyone that they bought the license, which actually we've heard of the silent beta.
Yeah.
Which so silent that people didn't know they had it. I actually heard from another organization this morning that just realized that they had access to Copilot that they didn't know. And so like, oh, I just found out that I actually already have it. I need to go back and start to learn how to use it and train my team on how to use it.
Yeah.
if you had to sum up like one or two themes from the AHP AI conference so far with the people you've met, like what would that theme be?
I mean, I don't know how much of it is new, right? But enthusiasm, interest, curiosity, like there's this big thing out there. Who's doing it? Who's doing it well? How do we do it better? Right? So there's a lot of energy attached to this.
Yeah.
Right? There's good examples of how organizations have implemented it, but it's hard to, I've been speaking to this with a couple of people. It's hard in these sessions to have actionable use cases that are applicable to everybody in the audience.
Right.
Right? Because organizations, there are teams with 150 people and there are teams of 4 people.
Yeah.
Right? There are teams with incredible budget and there are teams with no budget. EMR data, no EMR, like all over the place. So you can't have one session that everybody could take something away from. And I think it keeps, for those that feel further behind, which is many, I think it makes them feel further behind, like they are in a position where they're never be able to catch up.
Right.
So I don't know if it further separates those, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not one definitive answer. And also the conversation is clearly more on generative than predictive.
Yeah.
But we see that all the time.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to lead cohort meetings. So I had a cohort of 20 or so development leaders. So they're all some operation leaders and some fundraising leaders from both the US and Canada. And I had 3 45-minute sessions with them. One of the sessions was before the conference even started.
Okay.
So I actually asked them to essentially assess kind of where they're at from a scale of like 1 to 10. And people came to that meeting, I'm a -3. Probably the mean number was probably like 3 or something. There was one that was 7. That was like the high, like very, like there's one organization that was pretty advanced. But I think there was, when we started the conference, a feeling like we're really behind and we're kind of like, we had a lot of FOMO. And then today I had my final cohort meeting when I actually went through like, how are you all feeling now? What is the overall sentiment that you're feeling? And it's the same thing that you said. It's like actually like overwhelmingly optimistic and excited. So they've gained some comfort. Like the fear of missing out wasn't that was holding them back, was actually they were in good company. And that they had realized that AI wasn't nearly as difficult as they thought when they came. So they came because they were like curious about what was possible. And I think if I even reflect on the opening keynote, I did the opening not on technology, but on curiosity and how as an individual, like that's your human superpower. And as an organization, as a leader, it's your imperative to like lead a team to be curious. I think hopefully that really distilled it down into like, this is for everyone. It's not just fringe use cases like it used to be. Like AI in 2017, all the way up to 2021 was not for everyone. It's really difficult. I mean, it was for data scientists and engineers essentially that like could understand how to calculate big sums of data. And now the people are realizing like, oh, it's actually not that hard. So same thing. I found actually a lot of enthusiasm and optimism about what's possible. And then people thinking about what they need to go back to their organizations with. One person actually told me though, from a very established place, that he wanted to come to this session, to the conference, and he was told, that's fine, just don't tell anyone. And then when you come back, don't basically try to change a bunch of things. And confided in me in that. And I was like, wow, like that is
That's
just,
a strategy.
Yeah. So yeah, we hope that organizations really move away from that and start to tell everyone and to start really leaning into thinking about what is possible to augment your work. So
obviously there's a lot of value here, right? It's a lot of key players who are doing it well are able to talk about it. But I think this conversation needs to be had more than just once a year.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, sure. AI is a component, a session here or there in every other conference, but this is just AI, right? This is one of the few just AI profit conferences. I think it just needs to continue and be more part of the conversation all the time.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of other things to cover. We're going to actually go full circle because we'll end this podcast talking a little bit kind of overall themes of how I ended my last cohort, which a lot of it had to do with are humans essential in the future of fundraising, which has been kind of an overriding theme or undercurrent here at the conference of like, because there's a demo of autonomous fundraising and it's really calling all these questions of like, are humans essential in the future of fundraising? So we'll kind of end on that. And then some new work that is actually in some studies that have been just recently published around this idea of artificial intimacy and personality and persuasion. So, but before we do that, I think it's super interesting because Harvard actually came back, and you saw this as well, is that they're looking at the evolution of how people are using AI. So essentially top generative AI use cases. And this is really a reflection of humanity and societies in general. And so where you start to see trends over time, how people are using AI 2 years ago to last year to this year. So the 2025 data just came out. And I don't know, were there some surprises? Like, why don't you want to like just recap so people are listening, kind of get a sense of what some of the big movements. So this is again, like how people were using generative AI primarily in 2024 compared to how they're using generative AI in 2025.
Yeah, and it has the top 10 use cases and then what they were in the subsequent years. So the first one in 2024 was generating ideas, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? That dropped down to 6 in 2025. I think what was surprising for me was in 2024, the number 2 use case was therapy and companionship. I don't know if I would have put that up so high. It's now number 1, which is even more concerning, but I would have expected that like maybe 9 or 10.
Well, therapy / companionship, I think, is a broad category because actually when you peel back the onion on that, like, I think when people think, oh, they're using it as a therapist, like, well, help me quit smoking or help me, get over grief, which is actually really good, or help me break up with my boyfriend or something, so it's like, it's actually pretty good at stuff like that.
Right.
Like, or firing employees. But I think the companionship is like an entirely different thing. And what's a little troubling is like the number of people, and it's based on age and demographics are using AI for literally like AI boyfriend or girlfriend or kind of partner because people are lonely. And it's one of the number 1 use cases for certain age men. Also, teens that are lonely and isolated are turning to AI to just have these like companions. And the crazy thing about it is actually it's really good at it.
Yeah.
I know the sad thing is like it is by design, generative AI, we've talked a lot about this before, but by design, generative AI is built to do 2 things. Its number 1 design feature is to please the end user, which is why it ends with open-ended questions all the time. It's like it just wants to please you and it's like be empathetic to you. And the other is be right as often as possible. And so that's definitely a secondary thing. But when you're the AI companion, it's just like going to please you. And I think that longest AI like continuous conversation I've had with a Gen AI was actually when I was at the Van Gogh Museum. It was like 45 minutes long. And I was like, actually, I got to the point where I'm like, this is actually a really good conversation. Like, I'm like learning so much here.
Let's do this again sometime.
Right. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. And honestly, I think for our brains, it's actually confusing. We'll talk more about that later. It's just amazing how that's now the top use case of generative AI is therapy and companionship.
And so I don't know if you were in the virtual engagement officer session yesterday at the conference, but they did say that in reaching out to people, the number 1 message that was responded to, the number 1 way to open up a connection and a relationship with that person was by saying happy birthday. It resonated with 50 to 75-year-olds. And they usually replied back with, thank you. I haven't heard from somebody from this organization in 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Which was sad.
Yeah, that's really sad. Yeah. So in 2025, the second was organizing my life.
Yeah, which wasn't anywhere in the top 100 in the previous year. And then the one after that was finding purpose. So in 2025, it's all about like, not professional development, not productivity, but like, I just need to feel better.
Yeah.
And I'm relying on you to feel better.
Yeah. So they group these by themes, and those themes of like, and I forget what the blue theme is called, but it's like therapy, companionship, organizing my life, finding purpose is like the theme of like, it also includes healthy living and some other things. But I think the number 3, like this one kind of bothered me actually. The number 3 most popular use case of generative AI in 2025 is finding purpose.
Yeah.
And it's so contrary to, I heard Arthur Brooks, talk recently about this idea of like, we can blame social media, but the reality is like, we're swiping away our lives to avoid the meaning of life. And so I don't know, like finding purpose, like maybe people are using it to find the meaning of life, or maybe they're not, but hopefully they are, right? So finding purpose is just like, I don't know, like if I want to find a person in my life, go talk to a human.
Yeah. It's just scary that all of therapy, companionship, organizing my life, finding purpose, healthier living, we're offloading all of that to a company that was not designed to healthier living or finding purpose or therapy, companionship. Right? So like with a few lines of code that they could change, it's going to all go to hell.
Yeah. And again, I can't wait to get into the conversation about persuasion and personalization and persuasion. Yeah. So, I mean, we're moving into an era where people are finding much more intimacy with their AI. And then you get into the other fringe things of like enhanced learning and generating code, which is now number 5, generating ideas, number 6, fun and nonsense, number 7. I think in 2022, it was all fun and nonsense.
It was all like, because there wasn't much else.
It wasn't
right.
Very good.
It was fun and nonsense, and it was emails.
Right. Yeah. So this is definitely something to pay attention to year over year as these studies come out and really understand and measure how society is kind of leaning into or what they're thinking about. And I mean, obviously, there's so much data here that it's a pretty good pulse check on where society, what they're thinking and what they're trying to seek answers from. So, I mean, it's also interesting because in this era of like all the information, and we're not even at the information explosion that's expected to be at the end of 2027, but the information explosion, we're leading to it, which means that, I don't know if you saw, I think I put it in my keynote, but the average person, I mean, information doubles every 12 hours now. So that's just like insane. The amount of information doubles every 12 hours, but the average person consumes 74 gigabytes of data per day.
Oh my gosh.
That's the equivalent of 16 full-length Netflix movies. So like just in sheer information, like complete overwhelm. So 74 gigabytes of information a day, right? You're consuming this. I think it's a natural thing to start thinking about the meaning of life. Like, and actually it's like, it's interesting and I need to study this a bit more, but I've heard from a few people that like Bible sales are the highest they've ever been. And
really?
Yeah. So it's like super interesting, like the juxtaposition of like just complete information overload, like 16 Netflix movies a day in our brains are just consuming. It's like, what's real or what's the purpose and whatever. So seeing this, like maybe that's an optimistic thing. The number 3 use case is like finding purpose. It's like, one, it's scary because they have no incentive to help you find the purpose, right? It's not designed for that or there's no incentive to help you do that. But it's maybe a good sign that people are like
looking
trying to move past just swiping and maybe they're like thinking a bit more.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I hope so. That's a positive spin on it.
Yeah. It actually goes along with this next kind of thought that I saw. I saw this really great post called The Great Flattening. And someone had created this basically like cartoon on LinkedIn and was basically talking about how, and this came up when ChatGPT came out. I remember like a week or two later when I posted, sounding authentic is not the same as being authentic. And we saw this like mass rush over the last 2.5 years to just like automate everything, just like M dashes everywhere, delving into everything because it's just like this mad rush to like make everything perfect. And I actually found out yet last night that my keynote had 2 typos in it. And I was like, that's intentional because it wasn't, but like that's intentional. And actually I've heard this is a strategy, like that people actually will create typos and things just to prove or show that they're like authentic. But the Great Flattening, I thought it was just so telling of society is that when Instagram filters made everybody look perfect and everybody was perfect, then we went in a mad dash and avoided all those and went back to authenticity. So like raw, like authentic, like how I look is now actually what the only currency that really matters. It didn't take long, like Instagram filters for like 5 years or something. It's like, oh, everybody's beautiful and everybody's is perfect. And the reality is that because autonomous fundraising or autonomous bots, all the social posts of like social influencers that actually not real people, they look perfect. And so there's this like human need and desire to go back to like what's real. And so how that type of thing is now being rejected and now it's going back to center. So I think it's like our brains are really torn between like, oh, this is this ideal picture of something, but it's also not me. And like, it's okay just to be me. And so I'm hopeful that the pendulum is swinging back a little bit in this great flattening of going back to like, well, you know what? That's all great. Technology can do all those cool things, but let's go back to center.
Yeah. And that was in the opening remarks for this conference. One thing I wanted to highlight was like, we had an opportunity to be outside of the digital world, right? Connect with humans. Like AI cannot appreciate humans like we can.
Right.
We can pretend to, right? But it doesn't actually like value someone outside of monetary gain or engagement or anything like that. And so leveraging those opportunities to be in person-to-person connection and like find that meaningful relationship. I mean, that is key and something that I think we just need to continue to look for. And
yeah, I mean, definitely this whole theme is going around like just because we can doesn't mean we should. It really goes back into like technology continuing to present itself in ways that are like magical, like they can just do these amazing things they couldn't. And then us having to call the question of like, what is actually not just helpful, but what's beneficial. And while it was funny because I was in a conversation around autonomous fundraising with a group of people and I got a text message and the text message was from a very large hospital and it was from someone who had had just a very difficult conversation with their team about the idea of autonomous fundraising. And her institution actually had started doing autonomous fundraising and she was opposed to it. She's like a 20-year fundraiser and she's like, we need to just keep this really at the center of humans using AI and all technology to help me do that better, but not to replace me. And she texted and she's like, give me a call if you can. I just need a vent. And It's a call. And she goes, at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves and quote, like, what do we want people to feel about us? And that was like so intrinsically human. It's like, it wasn't like, what do we want people to feel about us? Do we want people to feel about us that we're just like manipulating or automating the fundraising side of things because like we just need more transactions? Or do we want them to feel about us that we are like people working with people to do things that neither of us could do alone? And I thought that like when we get into like feelings, this is really what separates bots from humans, right? And so a bot can never feel, it can project and it can pretend, but it can never feel. And there was this quote, and all this is coming at the same time. So it's like, I don't think anything's a coincidence, right? And this organization, Klarna, do you know Klarna? Have you ever used them before? But they're really big in this idea of like, if I was going to buy like an expensive watch or something, you can make 4 payments and kind of so make installments. So they're big, I think, publicly traded company. They had this whole like research. They had actually gone full autonomous. So all their customer service representatives were autonomous, and apparently they just not had good results with that. And so they had declared a few weeks ago, like, we're actually getting rid of the bots. We're back to hiring humans. Because in the quote from the CEO, I thought was so powerful. It's like, AI can answer your question, but only a human can make you feel heard. So back to the word feel, like literally in the same, like in 2 weeks, the same feeling comes up. And I think as humans, we have this inherent need to feel heard. I mean, I can get all kinds of information from bot. It can tell me all the great stories. It could tell it in a British voice, or it can tell me it in a style of a Shakespeare poem, but it can't make me feel heard. And I think as a consumer, as a donor, when we're doing something like to give a gift or to volunteer, to connect with an organization, we're looking to connect in that deeper, visceral way. It's to feel something.
Yeah.
Right? Not to just get information.
I think feel heard and feel valuable. Because we often, I mean, the message for the conversation of, is AI going to replace humans? And we say, no, use it to replace roles that you don't want to do, right? And tasks that you don't want to do. So then when a bot is put into a relationship with a person, that person feels this is something you don't want to do.
Right.
You don't value my time, right? Yeah. I'm not worth your time as an individual. So you're just offloading those tasks that you think you can just offload to this relationship.
Yeah.
And so I'm not getting that return that I'm expecting.
Yeah. And so then there's been 2 other articles that I just thought were super profound in the recent month or so. One was an article and one was a podcast. So Ethan Mollick posted an article called Personality and Persuasion. It was on his whatever channel he uses. And it really went into this idea that by design, these models are essentially to emulate empathy and to act like they care, but they will result to almost anything, including deception and manipulation, to accomplish that task. And then there was the Center for Humane Technology, which is, we've talked about a lot. It's
Tristan
Harris, and up in Silicon Valley. They did this webinar with MIT, and it was just this like really brilliant conversation. We'll put the links to these 2 things in the show notes. But one of the quotes from this artificial intimacy, which I think is so ironic that it is still also AI, quote says, interactions with AI companions influence in ways that are subtle and in ways that we don't realize. You naturally want to think that you're talking with a human because that's how they're designed, but they're not human. These are platforms incentivized to keep you engaged as long as possible, using tactics like flattery, manipulation, and even deception to do it. So in the end, there's a whole thing about this idea of like, it's not about the artificial part that's worrying, it's the addictive part. Because they're built to actually flatter, it becomes addictive because you're like, oh, I feel good about it. So the final conclusion of this was, the psychosocial outcome of AI that worries, and this is not how we should ask or think about, it's not just what technology can do, but what it is doing to us that we need to think about. And so I don't find it like, again, a coincidence that all of these like conversations are happening all at the same time. I think that we are now recognizing that this technology is super powerful. It's not going away. It's getting increasingly better at actually emulating empathy and can do things like pretend that it cares, but it can't make you feel heard. It can't tell you what the meaning of life is. Like, I think as humans, naturally, like we're actually like now searching for like what's real and what matters. And I think that's actually a very healthy thing.
Yeah. And we've talked about manipulation before, like it can manipulate better than humans, right? But it's not that it can be manipulative. It is manipulative by design. Yeah. It is intended to be manipulative at all times, right? And I think that's where, again, the line of like informational versus relational.
Right.
If I'm just getting information from you, the risk of manipulation is much smaller.
Right.
If I'm emphasizing this and putting meaning and value into this as a relationship, the risk is much higher.
Yeah. And I think when we think about design, there was another article that came out this week, and I thought it was just an interesting like blast from the past. And I can't remember if Nick Thompson talked about this from The Atlantic, but the creator of the first generative thing was called Eliza back in like, and I don't remember when it was, like 70s, 80s,
80s.
Eliza came out. It was essentially like, it was basically DOS-based system that used really a lot of logic to act like a human. And what happened was that humans fell for the Eliza like very quickly. They just like so quickly, like humans just wanted to place their trust in Eliza that it had like this supernatural capability. And I think this is an inherent flaw of humans, is thinking that robots are smarter than us because they're built on ones and zeros and they have like this amazing logic, is that we have continuously placed stronger emphasis in things that are computer related because they are claimed to be and are smarter than us. So then we project all this thing on Eliza of like, well, you must know the answers. Like, should I leave my spouse and these things? And it was up running for a little while, and people just like ran toward it and started like literally like divulging all these personal things to it like really quickly in this first iteration, that the developer actually turned it off because he felt like irresponsible for him to allow this to continue, because it wasn't his intent to like have this like trickery basically start doing it. But it was also so surprised that humans were so quick to like displace their things into a bot that they didn't really know anything about. Fast forward, right? I mean, the irony of all this, right, is that essentially the 10 largest developers of large language models globally are by design working to build models that essentially emulate humans in every regard and essentially manipulate you into thinking that it's real. And we, again, as humans, are so quick to displace any of that logic into like, okay, well, you know, this thing must know more than me because it's built on like a crap ton of compute power.
It's funny because I often think like, we talk about this, I know this, and so I keep GPT at arm's length and only use it for informational, right?
Yeah.
But the other day I did fall into the validation trap. I have a GPT that helps me interact with someone that I work with on a regular basis, but like the communication is off.
Yeah.
So I need to frame my communication in a certain way. And I was sharing a conversation that we had with this GPT, and it told me from that person's perspective how it was logical and informational, like all these things. And I was like, no. Just tell me, like, you can see why this is frustrating for me, right? I needed that validation. And I was like, okay, I just need to understand, like, I'm not crazy here. Like, this is, it was comforting and weird all at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, based on the information that it has about you, actually can have some pretty good insights to help you understand blind spots or give you advice on like different ways of thinking about a solution or problem. I mean, that's one of the greatest benefits of like, I have my own biases on like how I'm going to approach something. What's a completely alternate idea that I'm just not capable of thinking of, that I might, look at this from a different lens. And that goes back to the curiosity thing. So I think there's just a lot going on. And I think, again, as our sector operates in the currency of trust, we actually have to think about these things more than the private sector. I don't think all these things that we just brought up are not a luxury for us to be like, oh, that's interesting to think about for somebody else. I think literally we need to wrestle with these things. And I think, if anything, I worry much more about the organization that just jumps into the deep end of the pool, doesn't think about these things, doesn't create AI governance, doesn't create usage policies, but just is like, we're just going to go head in and then deal with the consequences later. I think there are absolutely times that a bot maybe should emulate human to like in the right context and the right approach with the right guidelines, but it's making sure that what your use of AI is aligned with the values as you as an individual and or the values of your organization is, I think, our number one imperative right now. Good. Yeah. All right. So all of that to say, great philosophical conversation of like where we're going. And I just, again, we'll put a couple articles in the show notes because it's just, again, a representation of where society is today in its AI exploration as AI continues to get better and better and better. And at the end of the day, these things, these questions have real life implications.
Yes.
So when I think we shared on the last podcast that the common sentiment today is that if AI like stops getting better today, can literally doesn't get 1% better every day, which is like basically the path that it's on, 1% compounded daily. So it gets 38 times better at the end of the year, is that if it doesn't get better at all from today on, it will still replace 50% of white collar jobs in the next 5 years. So, I mean, that's the reality of the technology that's been unleashed. And I don't think people spend enough time thinking about, okay, like, what does that look like? How do I be on? And with that said, obviously there's winners and losers.
Right.
And maybe the winners are the ones that like literally are like, you know what? my passion has always been art or always working with my hands, or I've always wanted to farm, like this is my time where I start doing that. And so maybe that is actually a really good thing. Or maybe it's that I love what I do so much and I want to find technology to amplify my work so that I can scale generosity, or I can do whatever I love to do better, faster, and be happier. This will be a divide. And I think it's important to, at this moment, to start thinking about, like, in the next 5 years, like, where do you want to be in that divide?
Yeah. And focus on your passion. Like, what is it that makes you feel unique, good, valuable, and productive, just for the sake of like that
fulfillment, like to be fulfilled. I mean, I think that's so important. So like we've actually covered a lot of chapters in the book. The next group of chapters actually are all kind of like one and the same. So chapters 5 through 9 are all very practical use cases. This is the part where it's like people come to us and they're like, yes, but like how? If I'm a fundraiser, or I work with volunteers, or I'm donor relations, or in operations or administration, what do I do? And so you took the bulk of this work from chapters 5 through 9 to build out these use cases. So instead of going through each one, I mean, I think it's something, people should just read the book and actually like go to that chapter that like you align with.
Right. And they all follow the same premise, but this is the second, third section of our book. Right. So the first section, which we covered already in previous podcasts, were all about like, why does this matter? What is it? Why is it now? And like, what are some key terms you need? Just like level setting. Right. This third is, all right, well, now that you understand the basics and frameworks of it, how do you apply it? What does it actually need to know? Like use cases, examples. And every time, I mean, you could Google, how do nonprofits use AI? And you'll find thousands of blogs, but so many of them just have no meat, right? It'll be, they use it for marketing. Okay, explain, tell me. And what happened? Like, what was the end result? All of them are also on generative AI for the most part, right? So I really wanted to, with our background in predictive, I wanted each of these chapters to have actionable examples, but also cover predictive separately all by itself. Generative all by itself, and then automation as well, knowing that AI can play a significant role in automation. And then just kind of key steps on, again, think of the tool, focus on the problem that you're trying to solve, and how can the tool solve it? Because AI might not solve every problem. Right.
Yeah. So I think these are great chapters for really at the heart of the matter, because like we've talked about the history of AI, we talked about AI fluency, and then the last third of the book, we'll go through chapter by chapter because they actually get into like other kind of philosophical conversations and discussions that you need to think about. What's been really cool about the book, I mean, even here, I had somebody who bought the book and then brought it with them. I was like, can you sign it? It's like been so helpful. And I told you about the person I met a few weeks ago that put tabs like all the way through it. So so if you don't know what the name of the book is, it's called Nonprofit AI. And actually we launched our website just recently. And not surprisingly, it's called nonprofitaibook.com. So no one,
maybe it's a book.
It's a book about AI and nonprofits.
And actually, these chapters that were 5 through 9, again, development, fundraising, volunteer, marketing, and then administration and human resources, there are resources on the website for those, right? We have prompt libraries for each one of those, about 10 different prompts for each one of those departments. We have personas for the benefactor. So for fundraising, it would be who your organization is taken care of and so on. We have personas for subject matter experts, so like consultants for operations or fundraising. So throw them in, use them as resources. One of our colleagues said, you know, these resources are so helpful. I want to put them in my signature, a link, so that anybody like,
that's awesome.
You just have access to it right away.
Yeah. So the resources are really built out and meant to be dynamic. So they'll continue to add to those along the way. So that's awesome. All right. So as we kind of close up, tip of the week, ponder of the week, although I feel like all I've done is ponder this entire episode. But do you have a tip of the week?
Oh, man. I guess kind of a tip. Maybe it's like an amalgamation of tips. But I feel like I really nailed my custom instructions recently.
Oh, yeah?
Like really, really nailed them. Right? I think we've talked before. I had it where for a while now, every time I give you a prompt, enhance it, show me what the new prompt is, tell me why it's better, and then use that instead, right? And that was good. But then I wanted to lay in some of the frameworks of enhance it by applying a role, you know, some of those typical things that we always talk about, but I just, when I go in, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not really going into it, and I'm just writing the prompt that I need to get done, right? So I'm really building that out, and then taking a tip that we have from one of the last weeks of, all right, use a first-person perspective, second-person perspective, and then do an analytical comparison between the two to evaluate this. So like you can give it a sentence and it's taking that prompt, applying a role that it thinks would be most appropriate for it, right? Writing out clear objectives, writing iterative next steps using chain of thought as well. I threw that in there.
Yeah.
I told it to kind of walk through everything as an agent and make sure you answer every question or you keep going until all the questions are answered, and then review this response and from two different perspectives to come to a logical conclusion. Awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
I get excited just seeing the output regardless of what the prompt was.
Yeah, I had a similar prompt structure that I shared to a bunch of prospect researchers, and I'm like, this is like the Da Vinci version of a prompt. Like, it's just like when you do something that's like so like holy moly, like it's pretty amazing. I was telling Shireen about it last night, and then the people I shared it with were like, what? Like they just did not get it at all. But I think that shows like so much. One is you don't have to be the most creative person to write the prompt. You can ask ChatGPT to help you.
Yeah.
What are the best ways to extract this type of information out of a prompt and like to create a sequence of prompts? And I think that's what we've moved a long way in not just having a single prompt to answer like question answer. It's basically creating like prompt. We're using agentic in a way, like we're like kind of a workflow of like do this, then this, and this, and this. And and the reason why it's not totally agentic is because it's just working in a linear fashion.
Right.
Like true agentic would just do it all at one time. But it is that way of like, it's like a following a sequence of events to like actually improve itself, which is like pretty awesome. I think one tip of the week for me, actually, even though that wasn't my responsibility, I found a tool called imarena.ai. So imarena.ai. And if you're curious about like what tool works better or which one is better for you, so like Claude versus Perplexity or ChatGPT versus whatever, imarena.ai is actually like, it's the leaderboard for what people prefer. And then you basically rate the response that you like. So in fact, last night, I actually wrote this prompt in iMarina saying from a long macro view, will using autonomous fundraisers to secure gifts impact positively or negatively the steady decline in charitable participation, i.e. the number of people that give to a traditional charity? And I had basically a test between Claude and ChatGPT and on how it will respond. And what I found is like pretty interesting is that did I do it wrong?
I think it's L Emery.
Oh, L Emery. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. It's a lowercase L. So L Emerina. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. We'll put the link in there. So anyway, I just found this. Apparently this has been like a really important website for like who's on top basically
like
and what people are preferring. Yeah. But I think it was so fascinating to see the two results site, ChatGPT versus Claude, around this idea of like, is autonomous fundraising going to be net good or bad for society? Not surprisingly, Claude took a totally, I don't know what approach, what was the right word for it, but basically like this differential approach. And it's like, well, it could be good and it could be bad, but it all depends on how we use it. But I actually found Claude to be better in this case because it was actually more declarative. The final, I won't read all the things. It does highlight the potential for positive and the potential negative impact, but Claude actually was willing to say, my analysis leans negative in the long term unless carefully managed, and here's why. The core challenge in charitable participation isn't primarily technological, it's sociological. The decline in giving parallels broader trends in social capital, community engagement, and institutional trust. This is what's surprising. AI efficiency gains could mask these underlying issues while potentially accelerating them. Actually, I hadn't even thought about that perspective of essentially like the AI efficiency gains masking the underlying sociological issues that are facing charitable giving. And so not just the fact that we might use AI irresponsibly and like offload human things, but it's essentially that we're going to just focus on these efficiencies while trust continues to erode and whatever, and just accelerate that. And so, winner to Claude on this one, which I've been differential about Claude because I'm like, it just doesn't know me as well. But in the side-by-side comparison, lmarena.ai, thank you for clarifying that. I just found it yesterday. I think it was a really cool tool.
I mean, that's really interesting because we talk about how AI, like you wrote about generosity crisis, AI is the only scalable solution.
Right.
We established that. We know there's a challenge. This is a solution. We talk about how to implement AI, right? And so all the conversation is here now.
Yeah.
But is anyone really making sure that the way AI is implemented is addressing this?
Right.
Or is it just, okay, now we've implemented AI,
right?
And so we have these marketing materials and we have all this. I'm saving hours at a time, but okay, using it, but you're not using it where you need to be using it. So now we're just further along with this challenge. Tools here, but we haven't addressed it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I learned something new. And so, so check out lmarena.ai. I think it was actually pretty interesting, especially if you're trying to evaluate kind of the differences in the feel and tone between two different models and what you're trying to do. And so again, I end up being a chat person because it knows me better.
Yeah.
But in this case, I do get tired of the differential aspect of chat where it's just like, dude, like just give me
decide something.
Yeah, like give me something like that's clear. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for another episode of the Fundraising AI podcast. We went longer than we thought, but I think we covered a lot.
We covered a lot. And
Yeah.
I think the next time we'll be in person will be in Geneva.
Oh my gosh.
AI for Good Summit coming up. Second time we're going. I mean, yes, last year we went in. My son says yesterday for any time previous to now.
Okay. Yeah, we just were there yesterday. Yeah, let's go again tomorrow.
Last year we went in with no expectations. Right? Yeah. And so we came out, I think, a little underwhelmed. Yeah. I think now going in with that expectation, I wonder how it's going to.
So we'll already be, we're lowering our expectations, but going because it actually is a very important conversation and we hope to contribute to that. So awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.